Good morning, everyone, or good afternoon, according to where you are. It's been a while since Rick and I have caught up. You can see we're back to the early mornings when you're talking about Portugal, because look, wet hair. I just come out the shower.
You're lucky. No hair.
And you've been up for hours, Rick, haven't you? Enjoying the Balinese heat.
I seem to get a wake-up call about 4 o'clock in the morning. I don't normally get out of bed then, but there is something that awakens me, and I get a download, and I know exactly what I need to do that following morning. So, and it just comes in little dribbles, in little incremental aspects, which might just be a sentence that I've been mulling over, or how does this come about, whatever. It's sort of asking the question, and then regularly at 4 o'clock in the morning, I get that answer. So sometimes I stay up and sometimes I snooze for a little bit longer, but It's all good.
Yeah. Most people, when they talk about their morning downloads, are talking about their toilet. I'm very in awe of people that are so regular. Anyway, our morning habits aside, I love that actually. I find if I have any inspiration, it usually comes to me in the middle of the night.
Yes.
When it's silent, and when the busy world has disappeared. And I guess when we are possibly between two veils, or 3 or 4 or 5, between our sort of waking consciousness, our sleepiness. What do you think happens to people when they go to sleep? I know it's slightly off topic because we're talking about how does your ego serve you, but it'll probably tie back in, right?
Yes, because it's all to do with brainwave frequencies, so that we change the frequency as we are from the waking state to the sort of meditative state, rapid eye movement, down into the deepest levels where the mind and the physical body disappear, but there is just consciousness aware of the consciousness. And so the silent witness is there taking it all in, but not separated from it. And it's not a mental construct. It's not any sort of form of construct. It's where we merge into this one state. And I've found on more than one occasion that I can be very conscious of that consciousness, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
And they are just, of course, labels. And I know I'm not dreaming. I'm just aware of what's happening at perhaps another dimension. I mean, everything is just another dimension of us. We are multi-dimensional beings. So we're tapping into another dimension that is not tangible or physical, but exists just the same. And it's hard to label it sometimes. Just being aware of being aware, conscious of being conscious. It's a lovely state.
Well, you'll know this from having children. Have you noticed how, like, babies and toddlers, they almost look like they die in the night? And I co-sleep, or with our babies, so like booby access is really easy, and then we don't have to make a big old fuss. And one of the things I notice is they almost stop breathing altogether. They look like there's absolutely nothing there. Like they go completely peacefully into sleep, fully into sleep. And then, in one of those panicked moments as a mum, thinking my baby's passed away, I gave them a really good kind of rough wake up, and all of a sudden they're back in their body. I've never noticed that so much in grown-ups, but in children, it looks like they slip in and out of the veils. Now, I've never really shared that with anyone else, but I'm guessing it's safe to do so with you. Did you notice that with your children?
Very much so.
What is your notice?
Because it's leading into exactly where we're heading with our conversation today. But up until about 18 months to 2 years of age, babies are in a state of almost permanent euphoria and connectedness. And they are just exuding unconditional love. And yes, they'll have their crying moments because that's the only way that they can communicate. And yes, they can be disturbed, but most of the time they're in this beautiful state. And then at around 18 months to 2 years, we start imposing, or they start to be recognized that there is two of everything. Oh, I've got two hands. Oh, your mum and dad. Oh, you were just people that looked after me, right?
Yeah.
And this is your toothbrush and brush, and this is your toothbrush. And this is your left foot. The left shoe goes on that one, and the right shoe goes on this. They were just feet and shoes before.
Yeah.
So what I've observed with our kids is that they're in this almost euphoric state. And I didn't witness any evil. I didn't witness any ill intent from them. That develops a little bit later on as they realize they are the imaginary, illusionary, separate from something or someone or their toys. So, yeah, probably the first 18 months they're in that state. And then the ego starts to take over. But it is possible, and we do know that we can go back and reclaim that state and be in that state of heart-centeredness and connectedness to everything. So we just forget.
Yeah,
We forget our origins.
I would absolutely concur with what you shared there. And we because I work and stay at home, I'm with the kids 24/7 and have been, since my first was born. It's been a real joy to observe. And not every parent gets to experience that necessarily, because if the pressures of life are exerting themselves in as much as, lots of people can't arrange their life so that they can take a really long leave with their children. But because we've not had to organize our children necessarily, to go to daycare or this, that, and the other. We've really allowed them to be as free as possible. And you're right, they don't really realize that they're separate from you for a really long time, especially because like I know you carried your babies in a sling or a papoose, because that's how I first met you. You were carrying one of your twins on you. Having our babies on our chests, the illusion of separateness, or actually the reality of, the illusion of separateness doesn't occur for a long time. It's funny, isn't it? Like the idea of inherent evil or manipulation. I think when that does come up, it's because of a need that's not able to be expressed. And so children are just copying what they've already seen and thinking, how can I get my needs met? How can I get my needs met? I get very fed up actually when I hear the philosophy of like crying it out. And there's a woman in England that talks about, I think she's called the baby whisperer or something, and she's teaching parents that the babies are manipulative from word go. Oh look, they're manipulating you. You just need to let them cry it out. It's like breaking in a dog or a horse. And my observation is that it's unnecessary. You just have to be with your child. But
and as a coach, I've coached so many people on exactly that they've abandonment issues, being discarded, not heard, crying out for help, and nothing or no one is there. So yes, I don't subscribe to that form of parenting. Just doesn't resonate with me.
I'm not saying it's wrong or anything, but I do recognize that lots of people have these separation anxieties. I was shocked to hear from one of my parents that I was in a bedroom on my own from day 2 of being alive, because the sound of me breathing disturbed my dad so much. It's so weird, because as a mum I couldn't bear to be away from my children. It's such an odd sensation to think you'd have something so precious and fragile and you'd put it miles away down a corridor. That's quite unusual.
We were fortunate because the twins were 7 weeks premature, and we went straight into kangaroo care, which is skin to skin contact with a batik around you. And for 9 days and 9 nights, Either I had one or Lita had one, or we both had two together, or if Lita needed to go to the toilet or I did. So for those 9 days and 9 nights, there was a constant connection. And what happened is entrainment occurred, and their little immature organs started to entrain with our healthy ones.
Yeah.
And after 9 days, the birthing clinic doctor said, take them home. They're feeding, they're happy, they're doing well. And we continued that process at home for a while. And it's really emulated with the Balinese way of bringing their family into togetherness with the baby, is that the little kids will carry the baby on their hip as long as if they're big enough to carry the baby. And these children until 6 months old don't touch the soil. They may touch the ground with in a ballet or a room with a mat on it, but they never have direct contact with the soil, so that encourages the carrying of the children around, so they're always in close contact with one or both of the parents or extended family. And this has been the way of indigenous wisdom for eons. That's how it was a long time ago. So there's a lot to be said about those formative ages, and especially between 0 and 18 months to 2 years of age, to have that beautiful bond there, that that you're loved, you're cared for, and there is somebody there for you to meet your needs, because you can't, obviously at that age, you can't fulfill those needs for yourself. So.
It's really special. I love how you and Lita were able to care for your twins. I think that's beautiful.
Yes,
I was quite taken by how the Balinese do it, because I'd never really seen people carrying their babies, until I'd come to Bali. And I was talking to Gusti, my taxi driver, and he said, "Oh, our babies are very precious. We carry them around like little princes and princesses. They are cherished." And then, of course, when I got back to the UK, I met Carl, got pregnant, and somebody slipped me a copy of Jean Liedloff's book, The Continuum Concept, about, how the baby is just so incorporated in life and not seen as this kind of weird thing that you've got to manage. Put it in different types of chairs to stop it getting into trouble. It's about, holding and encompassing it and giving it real experiences. I love that.
And our experience in Africa was where women would have the baby in the back, and they would be bending over planting crops or whatever, and the little baby would be horizontal, and their mum would stand up, and they would always be there. It was just amazing.
And they've got good balance, as a consequence.
Exactly.
I think all of us that have used a sling have got like sick on the back of our neck at some point, haven't we?
Yes.
Or down our fronts.
And dads love having the kids on their shoulders as well.
Yeah.
I'm a big fan of Gabor Mate.
Yes.
And he has a book, I think it's called Hold On to Your Children, how important it is to hold them and nurture them and just help them feel safe and secure. So very important.
It's interesting because these ideas run contrary to what the media or government advice would be. I had to hide from my midwives that we planned to co-sleep, that we were planning on having our baby in bed with us, even though we're not at risk. Neither of us particularly overweight, we didn't smoke or drink or take drugs. We're very mindful. But the idea is, you're going to kill your baby, it's going to suffocate, it's all this, that, and the other. And there's all these rules which are probably very well meaning from the people delivering the messages, maybe not the ones that that they originated from. But the idea of looking after your baby and putting its needs first, it's completely contrary to what we're told a baby needs. So, your baby needs to socialize, so like nursery schools are coming lower in age now. So people are and, the parents, they need to earn money because of the way we're all set up. And so the babies are put into childcare. And the message is, well, children need to be socialized from word go. And all these things I'd love to sort of challenge without causing offense to people, because obviously the way we raise our children is such a personal thing, and we all want the best for our children. And yeah, it's difficult, but I absolutely love what you're sharing, in as much as when the baby feels integral and part of the family, like really welcomed, like there's nothing wrong with them, which is why they're being excluded, then they grow up a lot more in their body, a lot more centered.
Yes. Yeah, and sometimes we forget that that's our future.
Yeah.
This is and which for me makes motherhood the most important job on the planet, well beyond the banking, the CEO or the president of a country. Motherhood, conscious motherhood, is the most important job on the planet. And look, it's unpaid labor.
Yes.
24 hours a day.
Well,
so women of the world, unite.
Well, it's funny,
change this inequality.
because before we came live, I was thinking, well, what can I update Rick with? And I was like, you know what? I'm really tired of wanting to earn money and provide all these services and help as many people as possible. Because actually, really, all I want to do is be at home with my children. And I was thinking, why isn't that paid? Because if I was paid on effort and the opportunity I'm giving my children and the love I'm giving my children, we could afford a really nice house. But that's not the case. Actually, what's happening is because I'm spending so much time with our children and away from work, we can't afford a nice house. We can afford to rent a nice house. We can't afford to buy one. And it's wrong. There's something really unholy about that. But anyway, children aside, how does this fit into the ego?
Okay,
let's explore that.
We've now established that the ego starts to be developed around about 18 months to 2 years of age. And that is when we are either training them or having them experience that there is two of things, mum and dad, day and night. It's nighttime, that's when you sleep, you come alive during the day. All of the duality is recognized or portrayed through our conversations, through our behaviors and activities. So there becomes a divorce from this state of oneness into, there's duality. And now if you have two kids in the same vicinity, this is mine and that's yours.
Yeah.
And it goes on and on and on. So it's developed there. And of course, it depending on the quality of the consciousness of the parent, then that can go into greed, really heavy separateness, aggression, all of the other side of the coin of the human being, the shadow side. And the irony is that the definition of the ego is a false sense of self. Let me say that again. It's a false sense of self, so that whatever is emanating from the ego is a lie. And we have allowed ourselves to be dictated by this lie that's perpetuated.
Yeah.
And Jill Bolte Taylor, the PhD brain scientist, said it's experienced through a peanut bunch of cells in the left hemisphere. Let me make it that way. And so we've been dictated to by a little bunch of cells that is steeped in fear, separateness, superiority, judgment, cynicism, victimhood, and everything like that.
Yeah.
Depending on what happens in our environment, all right, then that will shape the choices that we have, will be shaped by what we're observing in our parents and our immediate family. So if we see egoic behavior in any one or both of our parents or extended family, and then we lock onto that and we think, well, they look like they're surviving better.
Yeah.
Or, wow, look how he gets his way every time. Or, look how she kowtows, but keeps the peace and the harmony,
Yeah.
right? Having foregone her power and her authenticity to keep the peace and the harmony. So then we, at some stage, we look at these two adults who are, in essence, godlike, because they can do all stuff. And I'm a wee babe and I can't feed myself and I can't talk. I can't express myself. I get hot, cold, sick, dirty, and I can't even tell them that.
Yeah. Yeah.
These people that can dote over us and love us and feed us and clothe us and give us adventure, they are almost like godlike to us. And then the harsh reality is that maybe they're not so godlike after all. It's a bit like in relationships. We go into a relationship and with our rose-colored glasses on, and then we start to see the other side of the coin in our partners. So
we fall in love with the potential of the person, don't we? Not the
Indeed.
reality.
Or we fall in love with love, the idea of love.
Yeah.
So that's the starting point of the ego. And it then, depending on the environment and depending on the level of consciousness. So if we take fear as the driver of the ego, again, a false sense of ourselves, but it's easier then to be fearful of things. Now, I should clarify there's two kinds of fear. Biological fear, which is fight or flight. We don't want to lose that one. That will get us out of a building in case of an earthquake. It'll have us run away from a venomous snake or not swim in shark-infested waters. And I know I'm putting down sharks at this stage.
That's fine.
But biological fears. The fear that we're talking about with the ego is learnt, conditioned reactions. Right?
Yeah.
So we learn this and then we just duplicate it. And if we're feeding the ego, it will get bigger and bigger and bigger. If we starve the ego, then the other side of the coin comes up. And the other side of the coin is love, fear and love. So why do we have an ego? It's to show us what we don't want.
We don't
want to be angry. We don't want to be greedy. We don't want to be selfish. We don't want to be violent or aggressive. Although people that are steeped in the ego, we think that's them, who they are. And it's just like if we went to a restaurant and thought, I'm really not enjoying this meal. Or watching a movie, reading a book and thinking, this is not interesting me. So when we arrive at the point of I don't want this, the very next question is, well, what do I want?
Yeah.
And that's what the ego is there for. It's to show us what we don't want in order to make another choice of what we do want. And the choice that we're given, come down the road of fear with me, says the ego. And the heart says, no, come down the path of love with me. The only problem is the ego has a louder voice. The heart speaks softly and gently to us, gently nudging us along. The ego wants to get angry and overly assertive. So we have a tendency to listen to the voice of the ego. And it's not us, it's a part of us. It's like, again, the yin-yang symbol, the shadow side and the white side. And the trick is to integrate these two together so that we can have a conscious choice of choosing love in every moment, as opposed to reacting in every moment through fear or separateness or superiority. So it does serve us.
Yeah, definitely. Well, it's funny because I realised I was just off air telling you that, I want to spend this the next 3 months over the summer, giving myself the space to grow. That's my idea. That's how I've labeled this summer. This is my summer, the space to grow. Actually, what you realize you do for your clients. I was speaking to somebody yesterday who helps nourish clients who really needs nourishing. And I realized, I do a lot of hand holding and a lot of listening to people. And actually, that's what I need to do myself. And so I'm giving myself a nice chunk of time off. And actually, in deciding to do that, I realized that I just want to let it go. If I could let go of my job, I love my job, but the trappings of believing that you are what you do is really dangerous. You lose sight of who you are, and just giving myself this space of detaching from my job a little bit, I feel, or vocation or passion. I mean, it came out of my passion, which is great. I like that aspect of it, but just wanting to be in my family, just wanting to be in nature, just wanting that space and the simplicity of it. And that is kind of letting go of the ego, I mean, obviously not letting go of it fully, because there's something in that asserting you want to be in the family, maybe important in the family or something, but it's a simplicity. It's coming back, like, what are we here for? To be love and compassion, as far as I can see. We've since we last spoke, we've adopted an orphan duck. We found this orphan duck on its own. It had only just hatched, and it was on its own, and there were a couple of big ducks about to kill it. And my daughter saw it and said, Mum, don't let that happen. And of course, once I shooed the ducks away, this little duck came up and imprinted on us, and we waited and hoped that everything would be okay and this duck would be reunited. But a couple of hours later, it still hadn't happened, and so we've become duck carers, and had to put our needs aside to look after this little creature. And 3.5 weeks on, he's doing beautifully. He's a lovely duck, and so now we're caring for him until we can find him the right home. But these little surprises can come in when you let go of what it is you think you need to be doing, and that's
open the door. Lovely.
I
wanted to do that, but somebody told me it's not all it's quacked up to be. Sorry about that.
It's great.
And following on in a more rational sense.
Yeah, go on.
When the air attendants tell you what happens when there's a loss of cabin pressure, the mask will come down, and we put ours on first in order to be able to help people. And an interesting parallel here, because I woke up one morning and gave up 10 years of monthly retreats, 2,000 hours of retreats that I'd run, over 2,000. Just gave it up because I felt, no, I'm done with this. I am done with this. And it was a constant activity that was relentless. You have conversations with people, they want to join, you have to meet all the requirements and pick them up and accommodate them and feed them and go through the teaching process every month for 10 years. I just woke up one day and said, I'm done on this. This has been a beautiful experience. I feel I've garnered everything I can from this experience, and it's time to move on. So in a way, you're having the same sort of realization that it's time for me to, I've been giving myself away relentlessly, with family and with your work and with your astrology. And now some me time is necessary to top up. So well done.
Oh,
well done,
and to you too. I mean, now I'm just hoping something else kind of drops in. I'm still keeping on with my regular clients, but I'm not trying to advertise or anything. But I'm waiting for something more appropriate to drop in, and maybe it will, maybe it won't. Who knows? But it's interesting because these conversations are really of the moment. Like, I mean, I don't think mass media are necessarily sharing everything. I mean, I've been watching footage of riots going on around the world, governments being torn down, prime ministers fleeing, running to get on a boat suddenly. There's all sorts of different things happening. Fires, like we've got fires just like 20 kilometers away from us. It's been raging for quite a few days. Floods. all sorts of catastrophes. And then there's these massive protests going on. You know, the world is really kind of, it feels like it's being shaken awake at the moment. And
Yes.
and the funny thing is, I don't actually think it's being shaken enough. It almost feels like, I mean, we're aware of it. We felt it coming on, haven't we, Rick? And I'm
Yes.
sure most people that watch, you know, have been feeling the pressure mounting. But there's a lot going on at the moment, and it's all systemic stuff. You know,
Yes.
like laws that are being looked at, finance and money, how we live our lives. Do we have a right to grow our own vegetables? You know, like the amount of places in Europe and in America where food facilities have been shut, burnt, closed because of some legal technicality. It's
Yes.
unreal. You know, you can see what's going on here. There is something, you know, it feels like humanity's choices are being kind of squeezed by an outside super ego. Well, what are your thoughts? Like, are you observing similar?
Yeah, absolutely, and felt it. And you've just nailed it there. It's an advanced, extreme form of egotism. Right? The ego is all about fear. So the ultra rich are fearful for losing all of their money.
Yes.
Right? And then separateness. So now we have black and whites fighting, Christians and Muslims, and gay and
Pro-life,
straight, and
anti-abortion.
Democrats and vax and unvax.
Yeah.
There's more separateness. This is another major key player in the ego. And superiority. We are going to tell you what you can do with your body and how to do it and how many times you need to go to the doctor and blah, blah, blah. So those three there, fear, separateness, and superiority, are coming directly from the ego. And there's been a massive flood of this egoic behavior. It's always been there, but never to this extreme, where we now witness what we would have thought was impossible not that long ago, that a young boy of 17 can go into a school and murder 19 students and a couple of teachers. That was unheard of, not because there wasn't guns, right, but because the human psyche has given in to feeding the ego to a point where they will just be completely separate from their fellow human beings and feeling superior and fearful for their lives, not necessarily for their lives, but fearful of not.
Oh, I've lost him. I tell you what, I'm going to share a comment that's just come in from lovely Gemma O'Rourke from Tasmania. Sorry, you froze there. I didn't hear what you said, so I was just bringing up a lovely comment.
Just winding it up. That so we're seeing extreme cases of egoic behavior. At the same time, we don't hear about it as much, but we're seeing and sensing and feeling there is a wave, a snowball of love that is garnering more and more momentum and getting bigger as we, the human beings, are combating the disease of fear. So we are the human, the human response to disease is the immune system kicking in, and we collectively are the responding to the fear. And then, of course, we don't hear about that on the mainstream media. So
No, they don't want to tell us, do they? So we've got this lovely comment here that I suspect is going to be wonderful and beautiful, just like Gemma. So it's saying, beautiful, you guys, I so get you. The timings of things sometimes seem surprising, but with perspective is always divinely orchestrated. Now, I really like that. Thank you, Gemma. You're right, because we never really see the gift of things until after. Unless we've been through quite a few of these gifts that cause a bit of trauma, and then we might know, we might come to know and think, well, you know what, the last time this trauma happened, actually, well, it turned out to be the best thing. The last time that happened, it opened up a new opportunity. So I am actually with Gemma here, that whatever is going on, I think no matter how painful it is, and I know a lot of people in very extreme levels of pain. What is going on is bringing in a new perspective for sure. And I do think it's divinely inspired. Can you talk to me about how the divine might be behind that? I mean, obviously, if you agree with that, you might not. I'm sure you will do.
Just a moment, I'll go and ask my wife. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah, our place is called Heaven in Bali, and we always greet people, guests, homestay guests or retreatants, and I say, welcome to heaven. And I just want to quell the rumor that I'm God. Then I point at Lita and say, she is. We always knew. She always knew she was a woman. So, yes, it does appear there is some form of plan. There's some form of, call it a divine blueprint, call it a blueprint. We know there is a morphogenetic field around this planet, as there is around us as individuals. Yes. And in that morphogenetic field, this field of potential, the entirety of our past, present, and future lies. So there are some people that can gaze into this morphogenetic field and pick out from it what they would like to dip into and manifest in the world. And if that is the case, then who or what created this morphogenetic field, right? And then you have to ask yourself,
your wife? Did your wife connect? Did Lita create it? I
suspect she may have had something to do with it. And just quietly, you too, because we are collectively, we are this source. If everything is connected, not just some things, then we must be that source. And that source, there is a fragment of that source that lies within all of us. And we have all of the capabilities of that source, except that we're enclosed and encapsulated in a physical body living in a dualistic world. But the toroidal shapes that go around our hearts, our bodies, the earth, the cosmos is all interconnected, like cutting the onion. Each of the layers is interconnected. No one layer is more important than another. And all those layers are encompassing the core of the onion. And that's the best way I can see to describe it. So we don't have access into these other dimensions at this stage, but that doesn't mean we're not multi-dimensional beings. And as we grow our consciousness, we start tapping into these other dimensions which hold vibrational frequencies that we're not aware of, and they're certainly not solid, right? And so then we tap into this bigger picture. And to me, it looks like, and this is infinite, so how big is that? These toroidal shapes just go out into infinity. And this is why it's impossible to label this thing. Whenever we label it, it's not that, because it can't be confined to a label. But for the purpose of the exercise, we have various labels, whether they be source or God or Allah or whatever it is. And I sincerely believe that exists, this source intelligence. Right? There is a source, and there is a source intelligence that ensures that an almond tree grows into an almond tree, not in an orange tree. And that our babies, given the right circumstances, which is most of the time, have their arms and legs and feet and fingers all in the right place. How does that monocell know all of that? Well, it's growing into this morphogenetic field which already exists. So that then begets the question, well, what sort of intelligence is behind that? And that's where I'm absolutely gobsmacked. It is, for me, it's unfathomable. And every day I embrace this as part of my mantra, this extraordinary, unfathomable intelligence that must be behind this, because we know it's not just random. And I try not to embellish the label and just call it as first source, actually.
Yeah.
That's my read on it. So yes, I think there is a divine blueprint that is unfolding before our very eyes, and perhaps not fast enough for some of us. That's
Yeah.
that's our test of patience.
Yeah, absolutely. I loved what you shared there, and I've got to ask you, because I know I've when I've kind of shared with people about like the idea of like a divine, like divinely inspired guidance, like this absolute unfathomable, it's such a hard word, unfathomable intelligence. It almost seems unreal, when we see like high levels of evil in the world, where someone will purposefully want to take out somebody for shits and giggles, like for no real reason other than they're feeling awful in themselves.
Yes.
There are lots of plans ahead. I believe people have been mass poisoned at several times in humanity's history. And you have to wonder, like, why would anyone do that? Now, given the idea that there is a supreme divine guidance, which I do believe, and every now and again, I just flick between a couple of different truths in my head. Like, the one truth is that all is light and love. And that's the one that I hold on to. Well, if that's true, then the evil must also be part of it. Is it possible? Is it possible that there is when we look at the idea of love and light and etc., it's almost portrayed in a Star Wars kind of way that there is the light force and there is the dark force, but behind that there must be some kind of integrated unity pattern that it comes from, like the divine guidance. And that's the difficulty, is a lot of and I find myself going into the Star Wars, we've got white hats, black hats, but actually behind it all you have to go up another layer. So my question is kind of unfolding actually as a statement, but is that how it is, do you think? Because if that's true, there is where I'm trying to go with this. If that's true, then black hats, or the idea of people who are doing unspeakable evil, are actually part of the divine plan, and they're taking one for the team. Because I sure as hell wouldn't want to volunteer to do that kind of malarkey. And that is possibly because I've been up to those tricks in past lives or something. Like, what is our job right now, Rick? Is it to embrace the dark in ourselves that we see, so that it is loved, it's brought back into wholeness? How do you unpack what I've just said, first of all? That's a big one.
Well, thank you for the question mark at the end of that conversation. Lovely.
I'm out of practice. It's been ages since we've had a conversation.
One coin, two sides.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yes. Yeah.
So let's call this one coin source, for whatever, for want of a better name. So it has two sides, but it is one essence.
Yeah, right? Two wings, one bird.
And then we turn it that way. All that's ever happened to us in our lives, all of our trauma, our mental trauma, everything that has happened is we have momentarily disconnected from source.
Yeah.
That's the root cause of everything. When my counseling, whatever I'm doing, it always comes back to one source. You've disconnected from who you are, right? Now we know, because this ties in with the ego is a false sense of self.
Yeah.
Right. So we're now superimposing on this infinite consciousness that we are, right? And we're saying, no, I'm not. I'm this meat body, or I'm a man, a CEO, a mother, all right? Or I'm not good, I'm evil, blah, blah, blah. But in a state of oneness like that, there's nothing to experience. There's no relativity, there's no duality.
Yeah.
So in order to experience its creations, and we are not separate from that, so in order for us to experience our creations, we had to have duality, right? Where there is relativity, and now we can experience in the physical world, from this field of potential, we can manifest something and experience it, whether it be a painting or a garden or a child or a job. All of it was contained in this morphogenetic field, and we've dipped into it and manifested it into the real two-dimensional world. Whereas before, there was nothing there. There was a potential, just like the battery. I think I've said that in the past. The battery holds the potential, but it can do nothing until it has a negative and positive terminal connected to it. So we as source, nobody's separate from it. In order to experience creations, we had to have a playing field of duality. And some people prefer to play the shadow side, the fear side, the separate side, the victim side, the judgmental side, because we have a choice, a free will of choice. And some choose love, compassion, understanding, forgiveness, bravery, all of those beautiful elements of the heart. And all we've done is made a choice, because we came to experience, not to experience this or that, but just to experience our creations. And I'm sure, I'm speaking for myself, I made some choices back there when I was young and reckless that I would never, ever make again. Right? And one of them was going to war. Right? So, and I made some really silly choices, but every one of them I gained from the experience. And even if it was just, well, I wouldn't make that choice again. I'm done on that. That's why we have an ego, right? Because how do we know what we want until we've experienced what we don't want? And that's exactly what the ego does. And we don't try and squash it or suppress it or ignore it or run away from it. We need to embrace it, just like the yin yang symbol, and then we can be whole. When we can live with the ego, but not necessarily follow its false doctrine, its fearful doctrine. So yeah, I still have an ego. It comes up, and it's virtually inviting me, come down the path of fear with me. And I say, thank you very much. Been there lots of times. Not today. I'm going to choose the path of love. But how would I know that until I found out there is a choice? And how would I know what I want unless I had experienced what I didn't want? And that's why how the ego serves us.
Yeah, I absolutely hear you. And right now, it feels like the idea of the super ego, or the egoic field of how the world is appearing to many people at the moment. It seems very polar, like super polar right now, super polarized. Like the idea of you're good, you're evil. I'm good, you're evil. Everything is very, very black and white.
Yes.
And today is actually the day of the full moon, and actually July's astrology is one of the most divisive sets of astrology I've seen in a long time, and it culminates right at the end of July, August. So I'm seeing quite an upheavalist time ahead of us in the short term, where we're really getting to see the choice up close and personal.
Yes.
When we are in a very, very polar state, does that usually precede a coming into oneness? How do you think this might play out? Because I'm seeing it, with my clients in a personal way, and also, sorry, I just touched my keyboard pad and something flashed up.
I saw
that. Forgive me. I'm noticing that what's going on inside me, what's going on inside my clients, and then I'm seeing it reflected in the media or what's portrayed in the media. It just feels like it doesn't matter how practiced we are in following good and sort of saying, you know what, fear, you can take a hike today. It doesn't matter how well we've practiced the love path. It appears we're all being tested. How do you see this playing out?
Well, you'll notice there's a definitive lack of integrity in our leadership. Right? So there's duplicity, what is being said as opposed to what is being done. There's a marked difference and gap between that. So many of human beings are being tested. Okay, you say your integrity, truthfulness, honesty, delivering your promises, all of those in the package of integrity. So I'm going to tempt you, right? Just see how good you are. So we have guys like Tiger Woods that got tempted, right? He had everything, he got tempted. And our political structure and financial structure is just, I'm going to tempt you. I can make you very, very rich if you just look the other way, or corruption. So it would appear that the coals are on there, so that we arrive at a point where human being is so disadvantaged that they stand up and say, enough. We've had enough of this, right? And don't ask me whether it's going to happen at 4 o'clock on the 31st of July, 2022, because I have no idea. But as an astrologer, I think you might have a better idea. But
do you know what? I never give those time to predictions because because like it's a moment in time. But this is a learning process, isn't it?
It is. It is.
It's part of a whole set of experiences.
Yeah.
But yeah. I'd love it if it was done by 4 o'clock on the 31st. Then we could all go on holiday and relax.
Yeah.
And
on the 1st of August, we can breathe a sigh of relief. And if there's anything to despair, is the question, what is it going to take to wake up the human family? What is it going to take for the human family to wake up?
Yeah.
I mean, this division, this polarity has been orchestrated.
Absolutely,
carefully orchestrated. And if you look at our world in the last couple of years, it's been in abject fear of this virus that can kill you. Right? So a population in fear is much easier to control.
Yeah.
So, and who would have believed that within 6 weeks of the start of this, that the world would have been shut down?
Yeah.
Right? It's extraordinary.
It is,
and
actually. It takes a lot of effort to do that.
You have to take your hat off to the intelligence behind this. Right?
Oh, yeah.
You can have intelligent beings operating, but they may not have much consciousness.
Yeah.
So that's the question that is begotten. What is it going to take? And the answer is, what is it going to take for me to wake up to sufficiently be in integrity and follow my values and follow my heart all the way, every day, being a living example to my kids and my family and people that I come across. It starts with us. We can't wait for somebody else. So it's a silly question to ask, when is humanity going to wake up? Because we are humanity.
Yeah.
We are. So we bounce that back and says, how can I wake up more, a little bit more each day? How can I be a bit more conscious and more valued and heart-centered? So value-driven, I should say.
It's definitely happening, because that's why things are upheavalist at the moment. I remember when I first met you 12 years ago, learning some things about the world that I found very shocking. And it took a while to be able to kind of live with this new knowledge of how I was seeing the world suddenly. And you know, if this is happening to lots of people at the same time right now, you know, they're having the realization that maybe their trust has been misplaced. And you know, we're unpacking not only the fact that maybe the trust is being misplaced, but we're also unpacking our ego that has made it okay. Because at some level, you know, I was talking to Carl. You know, we were talking about. He said everyone that had their vaccine did it to save lives, and I said, I'm not sure about that. I'm really not sure about that. I'm sure that's why a lot of people think they had it, but actually, I think underneath, people had were possibly fearful, thought they were going to die. And I suspect, you know, if we really, really probe, most people do things for selfish reasons first, out of fear. Fear of survival is one of our most unique fears. And it's only when you've taken an action that you then start to put extra reasons as to why you did it. And, you know, it's a normal thing. You know, I actually think people who chose not to vaccinate versus people who chose to vaccinate probably had the same fears underlying it all. You know, they were thinking about their survival. So ones that didn't thought that it was going to be dangerous to them. The ones that did thought it was going to save them. And then we dress up the whys and wherefores, like, why did we do it? You know, one set of people say, well, I want to save humanity from this deadly disease. And then the other people are saying, well, I want to save humanity from all dying because I don't believe in it. You know, we're all coming from the same place. I'm pretty sure of it.
Yes.
But it's the dressing up of our motives. So a lot of people, we've followed authority. We've done the right thing by being good citizens and following what we've been told. But actually, underneath that is probably a fear, like, what will happen if I don't follow it? And so, you know, we've got all these ideas about us being brilliant citizens and this, that, and the other. And I see that the upheaval going on right now is actually less about understanding the truth of it, but actually understanding our truth. Like, where has our ego led us? What are these subtle little excuses and little bullshits that we've told ourselves over the years to make our life work for us? And I think that's where a lot of the work is going to be. It's unpacking how untruthful we've been to ourselves.
Yes.
Those silent little lies that we've created to make ourselves feel better about our life. And I know that sounds deeply cynical. And I'm really talking from my own experience. I've realized over the years that I've held loads of beliefs that actually, when you put them in the light of day or the light of truth, they don't stand. But, you know, there's loads of these beliefs and we almost say them like they're the words of a song, a well-rehearsed song. You know, I believe this, and this is why I do this, and this is the blah, 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 like definitive statements. And I think there's going to be a huge shift for people, and it's going to take months, years, possibly lifetimes to recover from.
Takes as long as it takes. And you're exactly right. If you come back to our definition of the ego, it's a false sense of self. So as long as we're saying, I am that, or I am this, or I am that, I'm an angry person, I'm jealous, I'm a victim, that's the ego telling you a lie, and we're going along with it.
Yeah.
You know? And it's not the ego that's the problem, it's the identification with it that's the problem. That when we say, I am that, I am fearful, I'm afraid, how can an infinite being, infinite consciousness that we are, how could it ever be afraid of anything?
Yeah.
It's impossible.
Yes.
So, yeah, and the narrative has been spun, and it's been orchestrated that keeping the human family in fear is easier to control. So it was more about, not about conscious choice, but more about obedience. And that's what the end result was, to get the population of Earth obediently doing what they're being told to do. And again, as an infinite being, that's impossible.
Yeah.
But if we're in fear, it's very easy to fall into that prey. So we are truly in incredible times, amazing times.
We've learned that we're not infinite. That's what
Yes.
creates the fear, I guess. We've got a lovely, you're right, we are in absolutely beautiful times and interesting times. We've got a lovely, another comment from Gemma. Rick, yes, she's giving you a flower. Isn't that nice? I feel ego softening as such an art, not ego death as some suggest, but as you describe, a vehicle to guide when it's integrated. And I love this word, it's a French word, ameliorated with love and compassion.
Beautiful, Gemma.
Yes,
beautiful.
Absolutely. So yes, it's not like when we see it as ego death, that becomes actually quite impossible, but it's the softening and the integration.
Yeah.
Lovely.
Do you remember that story about the Native and First Nation chief, and he was talking to the boy about the black wolf and the white wolf?
Mm-hmm.
Do you remember that story? And
Go on, run it past us again.
Well, a young native warrior goes to the chief and says, "Chief, tell me about life. I need to know about life, and you're old and wise." And the chief said, "Well, in you got two wolves. You've got to have a black wolf, which is very angry and very aggressive. It doesn't share the food with the others. It's nurturing, and it's very upsetting." And the boy says, "Oh, Chief, I think I have a little bit of that in me." And then he said, "But you also have a white wolf, which is a lovely pet. It follows your pinto pony through the woods with you. It will bathe in the river with you, snuggle up around the campfire with you. And when you've been away and you come back to the village, it jumps up and licks you all over your face. And it's just absolutely loving." And the young boy says, "I think I have some of that in me too, Chief." And then as the story goes, the chief says, "But only one of those wolves survive." And the boy said, "Oh, Chief, tell me which one." And he said, "The one you feed." But what was missing from that story, and it's profound in its entirety there, but that now precludes the black wolf. Right, I'm just going to feed the white side, and this is our distraction of Facebook and social media and all the distractions we have. I just want the white side, and we have to integrate these two. So how can we make the loving wolf tame the black wolf so they can coexist in harmony together? They still exist, but now they are merged as one being, one wolf that has two sides to it. And that wolf, like we do, can make a conscious choice. I'm going to choose the path of love today. So that was missing from the story originally, but we really don't want to feed the fears, that's for sure, right? But if we're just feeding this love side, we're not fully integrated. We won't be whole until we've mastered the shadow and the light side of us. So.
Wow, that's a lovely and poignant moment, I think, to leave this conversation. But before we go, I really want to thank Gemma, because she's just come in, and I can see we've had some silent people watching us as well. Thank you so much for your presence. So Gemma's also saying, "Louisa, I feel you today, beauty. Your courageous vulnerability almost brings a tear." Oh, bless you. "These exciting times are so challenging. My triathlon endurance training is valuable now."
Wow, well, you do triathlons, Gemma. I have
Gemma's amazing.
I have a daughter in Australia that qualified for the Ironman in New Zealand.
Wow.
A triathlon, but unfortunately COVID put an end to that. So she's now had a young baby and she's back in training again. So I know what you have to go through to run the triathlon. So hats off to you, and hats off to your deep spirit and beautiful way of enunciating it. Well done.
Yeah. Oh, Gemma's beautiful. As you can see, she's an artist, healer, and yoga teacher. She's a really, really beautiful person. Thank you so much for joining us today, Gemma. I really appreciate that. And thank you if you've been watching live, or if you're watching later on. Thank you so much for your presence. I hope you've enjoyed this. Rick and I will be back. We're not so much weekly at the moment because there's lots of life going on, isn't there?
Yes, and there's no stopping it.
Yeah, but we will be back with you as soon as the moment arises, probably in about 3 or 4 weeks. So until that point, I wish you lots of love and peace and joy. And if there is something you would like Rick and I to talk about, then please do just drop us a line. I'm just going to put our email addresses up just so that you can see, or our websites, because actually I always forget to say that, you know, like if somebody did want to contact you, Rick, you know, if they love the way you're being and they want to work with you, even though you're not doing all of your retreats at the moment, you know, do you want them to contact you at rickpursell.com?
Either there or info at rickpursell.com. We'll do
Excellent.
it. Good.
Excellent.
And I welcome that. And thank you for all you do, Louisa, and all of our guests, and stay in that beautiful hearts of yours and spread love around like butter on hot toast.
I love that. Thank you so much. Now, speaking about hot toast, I need to make a cup of tea for my husband and get him ready for his show. But I love you so much. Thank you so much for joining me once again. It's lovely to see your smiling, warm face, and it's lovely to connect with you. It really is. Lots of love to you and Lita and the girls. And we'll
love it. And I love you, and love to you and your family as well.
And the duck.
And the duck.
All right. Lots of love. We're drawing this to a close. Take care. Bye for now.
Bye-bye.